Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Today I would like to talk about international trade, which focuses on balance of trade, balance of payment, exchange rate, and forms of competitive advantage. I would like to begin by explaining what is balance of trade or BOT. In Malay, it is called imbangan dagangan. It is defined as an economic value of all products a country exports minus the economic value of all products it imports. BOT is difference between the total value of exports and the total value of imports within a specific time or a period of time. Sometimes it is also referred to as trade balance, commercial balance, or net exports. BOT shows whether the country had achieved to sell locally produced products and services to foreign countries, which means export more than import product from abroad in the focused period. Therefore, BOT is considered as the main economic indicator of a country's international commerce activities, and it served as the parameter to assess the economic growth of the country. Trade deficit is defined as when a total value of export is lower than imports. It is a situation in which a country's import exceeds its export. It creates a negative balance of trade. It means that the country is spending more than the earning in the global arena, which is not a good sign of economic growth. If the country was experiencing the trade deficit, the government might need to implement new taxes by imposing taxes to certain products or services, or they might need to borrow from International Monetary Fund (IMF) to cover for the budget shortage. On the other hand, trade surplus is a situation in which a country's exports exceed its imports. We sell things a lot to other countries rather than we buy things a lot from other countries. So when the total value of exports is higher than imports, it is called trade surplus. It means that the country gains profits from international trade. If the country is experiencing trade surplus, the government can use this extra budget to increase the local investments, to enhance the standard of living, or for an investment to create new income sources for the country. So that's the difference between trade deficit and trade surplus. As for Malaysia, if you read the Trading Economics online, they reported that Malaysia posted a trade deficit this year in April 2020. One of the reasons, of course, is the COVID-19 pandemic. So Malaysia posted a trade deficit of RM 3.5 billion as compared to RM 10.8 billion surplus in the same month a year ago. Therefore, we are currently experiencing trade deficit. That's why previously we talked about the external environment that might affect the businesses. So COVID-19 pandemic is one of the external environment that might affect the businesses. This COVID-19 is one of the reasons towards the trade deficit of most of the countries in the world too. Next, we discuss about balance of payments. It has a relationship with balance of trade that we have explained earlier. So what is balance of payments? Okay, it is the flow of all money into or out of a country. Okay, so balance of trade is actually the largest portion of balance of payment. So it's inside the balance of payment, okay, which is the record of a country's international financial activities. So BOP, balance of payments, comprise of current account, okay, which is the international trade transactions, okay, which includes both balance of trade and capital account, which is the international investment transaction. Okay, so for this balance of payment, okay, I will share with you the videos that shows to you visually what is current account, what is capital account in balance of payment. Okay, current account is actually something to do with balance of trade, which is import and export, and capital account is basically related to investment transaction. Okay, using the trade surplus that you gain earlier in trade, in international trade. So BOP, balance of trade, is the sum of all inbound, okay, money into, and outbound transaction, money out, okay, between a country's economic entities and the rest of the world. All right, so theoretically, okay, two accounts should be balancing each other. The current account and the capital account should be balancing each other and yield a zero sum BOP. But that is not actually applicable to most of the situation. Okay, because of the different economic policies, because of the fluctuations in foreign exchange rates. Okay, so usually it will cause deviations and no zero sum BOP. Okay, but that is theoretically. Next, let's talk about exchange rate. I guess everyone knows what is exchange rate. When we want to travel around the world, we usually go to the money changer at the shopping complexes, at the shop lot, at the airport to do the money exchange to other currency for the country that we want to travel to. Am I right? However, we do have other options, that is banks and using the ATM machine. Banks usually have the lowest currency fees, while for ATM, it can be found anywhere. Okay, but most of the time, me myself, for instance, I will go to the money changer and compare from one money changer to another. All right, so here we want to discuss on what is exchange rate and what are the types of exchange rate. Exchange rate is the rate at which a currency of one nation can be exchanged for the currency of another nation. In other words, it's how much it costs to buy a sum of foreign money using our local currency. So let me give you an example of, let's say we want to go to US, we want to go to Singapore or other countries that use USD for their currency. We need to go to the money changer and change the rate of Malaysian ringgit to USD. Okay, so why we need to change our currency to other currency? One of the reason is because they do not accept our currency in their country, except for certain country like our neighbor Vietnam. Previously, if you go shopping, they will accept ringgit Malaysia. But most of the countries, they just accept their currencies. So we need to do the exchange. Now let's move on to the type of exchange rate that are floating exchange rate and fixed exchange rate. Floating exchange rate is based on market forces. It will go up and down according to the laws of demand and supply. If there's high demand, the price will be higher. If a currency is widely available on the market and there isn't much demand for it, value will decrease. On the other hand, When a currency is in short supply or on high demand, the exchange rate will go up. It's just like USD. Why the rate of USD is very high? It is because of a high demand in the market. This floating exchange rate will fluctuate over time depending on the market demand. On the contrary, fixed exchange rate means pegged. It's static, stagnant. It is officially set by the government. The government will control and cap at a constant level. So when this currency is pegged, its value is fixed to that of another currency. This means you will always get the same amount of money whenever you exchange the two currencies because the exchange rate is always the same. One of the country that is still using this fixed exchange rate is China. The China government regulates the flow of the currency into and out of China, and the government determines the precise rate of exchange within its borders. The last subtopic for international trade is forms of competitive advantage. Before we discuss the fundamental issues involved in international business management, we must consider this one last factor, forms of competitive advantage. Because no country can produce everything that it needs, countries tend to export what they can produce better or less expensively than other countries and use the proceeds to import what they can produce as effectively. Competitive advantage refers to the factors that allow a company to produce goods or services better or more cheaply than its rivals. These factors allow the productive entity to generate more sales or superior margins compared to its market rivals. A nation's decision to import or export is based on the advantages that it enjoys, whether they have the absolute advantage or they have the comparative advantage. Absolute advantage is the ability to produce something more efficiently than any other country can. For example, if Canada can produce 100 pounds of beef using 2 ranches, while Argentina needs 3 ranches to produce 100 pounds of beef, Canada has an absolute advantage over Argentina in beef production. On the other hand, comparative advantage is the ability to produce some products more efficiently than others. For example, if you are a great plumber and a great babysitter, your comparative advantage is plumbing. Why? Because you will make more money as a plumber. So, comparative advantage is when it can produce a good at a lower opportunity cost than another country. Both absolute and comparative advantages translate into competitive advantage. In recent years, a theory of national competitive advantage has become a widely accepted model of why nations engage in international business. National competitive advantage derives from 4 conditions. First, factor conditions. Second, demand conditions. Third, related and supporting industries. And fourth, strategies, structures, and rivalries. When all attributes of national advantage exist, these 4 attributes, a nation is likely to be heavily involved in international business. For instance, for the first condition, factor conditions, the factor conditions are the factors of production that we have discussed in chapter 1. The labor, capital, entrepreneurs, physical resources, and information resources. If you have these factor conditions, so you are good enough to involve in international business. In addition, if you have demand conditions, you are good to go. You're good to go for an international business. Demand conditions reflect a large domestic consumer base that promotes strong demand for innovative products. The third condition is related and supporting industries. If you have these related and supporting industries, you have the strong local or regional suppliers or industrial customers, then you can involve in international business. These related and supporting industries will support your business. Finally, if you have a good, strong strategies, structures, and rivalries, you may involve in international business, as these strategies, structures, and rivalries refer to the firms and industries that stress cost reduction, product quality, higher productivity, and innovative products. Let me give you an example of Japan that has the national competitive advantage derives from the four conditions. Japan has abundance of natural resources and strong domestic demand for automobiles. Its car makers have well-oiled supplier networks, that is, relating and supporting industries. And it also has intense competition among domestic firms, that is for strategies, structures, and rivalries. And the car companies like Honda and Toyota are successful in foreign markets. That means they have a high demand in foreign market.